This shot you see right here, I actually filmed that in my living room. No exotic trips, no studios, just some boring walls. And that's actually the point. A boring location or a boring trip, it doesn't have to kill your creativity. And that's actually something I've struggled with myself for a long time. But here's the truth, most of us aren't gonna be in Tokyo or the Maldives for a majority of the time that we're filming. I know much of my content is mundane locations, boring clips, and it's up to me to use my creativity to somehow make that content interesting and tell interesting stories. That's much of the challenge that we face when we're creating content. Anyone can make Hawaii look cinematic or all of these beautiful spots throughout the world. The real creative test is, can you make your living room look cinematic? Can you make a hallway or a kitchen or some location around your house look cinematic? And that's the muscle I want to show you how to build in this video. It just takes a little outside of the box thinking. Now let's get to some of these gems. Okay, the first consideration is consider filming in a liminal space. And let's first define what a liminal space is. Think parking garages, empty hallways, late night gas stations. They're those in-between spots that people are kind of passing through. They're not built for destinations, but places of transit. Shooting these types of locations during a transitional part of the day, think dusk, dawn, 3 a.m. when only the fridge light's on in the kitchen. If you pair that with the right soundtrack, that scene just instantly turns cinematic. When done right, it creates a feeling that's hard to describe. It's like a feeling that you've felt before. You get this sense of nostalgia paired with a sense of eeriness. It's the kind of shot that makes you stop and think, why does this feel so familiar? And that's the power of filming liminal spaces when done right. Next is to embrace grainy or lo-fi footage. And here's the move. I know we're caught up in this 4K, 8K world of getting super crystal clear, high quality footage, but sometimes the cinematic move is to embrace a lower quality, embrace the low light, embrace imperfection. A lot of times there's beauty in flaws. Shoot in low light, let the shadows swallow half the frame. Don't be afraid of the digital noise. Add a film grain on purpose. Frame the corner of the room, the ceiling fan, the texture of the wall. When you do this correctly, the image feels raw, it feels alive, and that in a way is what grabs viewers' attention, is those imperfections in a sea of perfect 4K footage. You know, I like to compare it similarly to, a lot of the Polaroids that we hang on to that have scratches on them, or listening to a song on a record player, because yeah, it's not as clear as streaming on Spotify, but it feels gritty, it feels soulful, it takes you back to another time. It gives you this sense of warm nostalgia, and you can translate that same feeling into the footage that you edit. That's what makes it stick to people's minds. The next gem is camera movement. You could do a lot with static, boring footage if you have a little creativity. I know one of the effects that I played around with that, garnered a lot of attention on social media when I put it out was an unconventional movement that I did with some static footage. It was me sitting in the snow. I filmed it on a tripod, and through some masking and Ken Burns effects, I was able to mimic a dolly zoom. So the clip went from me just sitting in a chair in the snow to this cool dolly zoom effect that really brought the clip to life. It totally changed how you experience that clip. You can do a lot if you're willing to experiment and play around with different techniques. The point is, you don't always need a certain amount of gear to make a scene look cool. Sometimes it's just about experimentation and playing around with things, and through that experimentation you find some really cool recipes of things that work that you can add to your toolkit. Next is Surrealist narrative disruption. And if you haven't heard of this concept, basically in filmmaking, Surrealist narrative disruption, it's about breaking the logical flow of events, disrupting the continuity. If A, B, and C were to happen, you basically mix up that flow. You might show A, then you might show C, and then you might show B. And to further illustrate that, so you might have an example of someone getting coffee out of the fridge, pouring it into a cup, drinking the coffee. That would be the logical flow of events. But instead, you might show them grabbing the coffee, then you would show an empty coffee cup, and then you might cut back to the person drinking the coffee. It might sound a little bit wacky, but that's the point. It's supposed to throw the viewer off. It disrupts kind of the reality that the viewer and we're all used to. The goal is to make the viewer lean in, to throw them off just enough so that they can't predict what's coming next and kind of keep them on the edge of their seat. That isn't as much of a filming technique, but a technique that stirs up some type of feeling in what the viewer's seeing in front of them. Next, creating effects of found footage or analog footage. And this kind of ties into the grainy footage tip that we just talked about. And I like to compare it like this. If grainy and lo-fi footage is the texture, then the found footage and the analog footage provides the context or the timestamp of that footage, if that makes sense. So it further builds on that nostalgia feeling that we talked about. And with this, it's not just about making something look old. It's more about tricking the viewer into feeling like they stumbled upon something from a different time period, like they found a piece of forgotten history. You can shoot your normal digital clean footage and then use, like VHS overlays over it, those grainy overlays, those timestamps. Or you can even distort the frame, to kind of make it feel like it's been sitting in someone's attic for 20 years. And why does this work? Because us as humans, we're kind of wired to lean in and focus on something that we feel like, brings us back to a different time or to a time that we haven't experienced, but a time that we can identify. The next tip is practical impossibility effects. What I mean by that, sometimes the most cinematic trick you can do is create something that feels impossible. Those effects that viewers, stop and replay and rewatch again. Just thinking back on some of the effects that I've done in videos, you've got a miniature man in the palm of your hands, and that created like this unique transition, an eyeball that was used as a portal to take the viewer to another place. That suddenly bends reality. A pickleball crashing into the screen, kind of creating this 3D effect that makes an unexpected twist in the scene. It's about using simple tricks to make the viewer question what they're seeing. Anything that throws a wrench in that is going to be more memorable. So when something looks impossible, they're going to stop and replay it, try to figure out how that was accomplished. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel, share this video with your friends, your family. Any tips that you have yourself that you've discovered that make your videos more cinematic, drop them in the comments. I'd be interested to read some of the things you all have discovered. Follow me on TikTok, follow me on Threads, both Can't Miss James. Those are both my account handles. Watch all my other videos. I have a lot of videos on Final Cut Pro tips and like camera videos. I've got a good mix of some pretty helpful content within my library. So binge watch all of my content. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a blessed day.